The NBA entered its sixth season in the fall of 1951, carrying the weight of both progress and uncertainty. The league had shrunk again, down to 10 teams, a reminder that professional basketball was still a fragile business. Yet, in those lean years, the game was slowly sharpening into the modern product we recognize today. At the league's offices, President Maurice Podoloff pushed for stability. Television had begun flirting with basketball broadcasts, though the NBA was still a niche attraction compared to baseball's dominance and college football's prestige. Arena owners knew that keeping fans in the seats was key to survival, and the best way to do that was with stars. Luckily, the league had them. George Mikan remained the central figure. Though critics complained about his rough play and lack of finesse, there was no denying that the 6 feet 10 inches Minneapolis Lakers center had changed basketball itself. His dominance in the paint forced defenses to collapse and coaches to invent new strategies. Surrounding him were Vern Mickelson, a bruising forward, and Slater Martin, a steady backcourt leader, giving Minneapolis a well-rounded dynasty. In the East, the Syracuse Nationals leaned heavily on Dolph Schayes. Tall, agile, and skilled, Schayes wasn't flashy like Mikan or Bob Cousy, but his consistent scoring and relentless rebounding made him one of the most reliable stars in the NBA. Philadelphia, Boston, and New York also had hopes of contending, with Boston's Cousy in particular captivating crowds. His behind-the-back dribbles and daring passes were controversial among old-school fans, but he was undeniably a box-office draw. The Knicks, the Celtics, the Nationals, and of course the Lakers, these were the teams shaping the NBA's identity. The 1951-52 season would highlight just how much the game was shifting, from bruising post-battles to a style where playmakers and innovators began to shine. The 1951-52 NBA regular season was a 66-game grind. Travel was still mostly by train, with teams often playing back-to-back nights in smoky arenas before modest crowds. But within those games, a new identity for professional basketball was taking shape. In the Eastern Division, the New York Knicks emerged as the team to beat. Harry the Horse Gallatin embodied their toughness, crashing the boards with a relentless style that earned him respect league-wide. Paired with playmaker Dick McGuire and scorer Karl Braun, the Knicks combined grit with finesse. They finished with a 37-29 record, topping the East and sending a message that they were more than just New York's team. They were contenders. The Boston Celtics, still in the early stages of Red Auerbach's leadership, leaned heavily on Bob Cousy. Cousy's averages of 15.6 points and 7.7 assists per game didn't fully capture his impact. He was the first player to make passing an art form, dazzling spectators while creating easy baskets for teammates. Though Boston finished behind New York, Cousy's style planted the seeds for the Celtics' eventual dynasty. The Syracuse Nationals, with Schayes at the helm, played a deliberate, inside-out game. Schayes averaged 14.1 points per game and was backed by Paul Seymour's steady backcourt play. Syracuse wasn't as flashy as New York or Boston, but they were consistent, always hovering near the top of the standings. Meanwhile, the Minneapolis Lakers ruled the West. With Mikan averaging 23.8 points and pulling down rebounds in bunches, the Lakers went 40-26, tops in the league. Their physical style often overwhelmed opponents, and Mikan's presence alone gave them a psychological edge. The Rochester Royals, last year's champions, slipped but remained dangerous behind Arnie Risen and Bobby Wanzer. Fort Wayne and Indianapolis rounded out the West, feisty but not quite on Minneapolis level. By season's end, the Lakers and Knicks had established themselves as the class of their divisions, setting the stage for a postseason filled with drama, fatigue, and unforgettable performances. The 1952 playoffs were grueling, far different from today's bracket system. Teams could face best-of-3 or best-of-5 series, with constant travel in between, creating both physical and mental exhaustion. Yet it was in this crucible that legends were forged. In the East, the Knicks survived a tough semifinal against the Celtics. Cousy dazzled with his playmaking, but Gallatin's rebounding and Braun's scoring pushed New York through. Syracuse also made noise, but the Knicks had momentum on their side. Out west, the Lakers faced a challenge from the Royals. Rochester had eliminated Minneapolis the previous year and believed it could do so again. Mikan, however, was determined. He powered the Lakers through with relentless scoring inside, reminding everyone that the big man still ruled the game. The Eastern Finals were a war between the Knicks and Nationals. Schayes was brilliant. His high-arcing set shot and dominance on the boards gave Syracuse hope, but New York's balance proved too much. Gallatin and Maguire were steady throughout, and the Knicks advanced to their first NBA Finals. In the Western Finals, Mikan's Lakers once again imposed their will. Despite spirited resistance from Rochester, Minneapolis advanced, setting up a coast-to-coast showdown, the mighty Lakers against the scrappy, defense-first Knicks. The finals matched basketball's biggest star against its biggest market. On one side was George Mikan and the Lakers, chasing another championship. On the other hand was New York, the league's crown jewel city, eager for its first taste of glory. The series went the distance, 7 hard-fought games. Madison Square Garden was packed with New Yorkers desperate for a title, while in Minneapolis, the small-market fans roared for their dynasty to continue. Game after game, Mikan imposed his will. He scored 32 points in Game 1, 30 in Game 4, and 22 in the decisive Game 7. His sheer size and skill were too much for New York's defense. The Knicks scrapped and clawed, Gallatin pulling down rebounds, Braun hitting jumpers, but they couldn't match Mikan's dominance. In the end, the Lakers claimed the championship, winning the series 4-3. Mikan averaged 23 points per game in the finals and further cemented his legacy as the league's first true superstar. For the Knicks, the loss was heartbreaking, but it showed that New York basketball mattered, that the biggest stage could host some of the game's fiercest battles. For the NBA, it was another step forward, a sign that the league could produce the kind of drama and spectacle that fans craved. The 1951-52 season highlighted the NBA's growing pains and its growing stars. Mikan's Lakers still reigned supreme, but Dolph Schayes was emerging as a consistent force, and Bob Cousy was reshaping how guards played the game. The Knicks' run to the finals also proved that big markets could energize the league's future. By the fall of 1952, the NBA was still fighting for survival in America's crowded sports landscape. Baseball remained king, college football and boxing dominated headlines, and the young professional basketball league still carried the air of a niche experiment. Yet momentum was quietly building. Television continued to flirt with the NBA, experimenting with live broadcasts of select games. Though audiences were modest, the very act of putting professional basketball into living rooms gave the sport an aura of legitimacy. For arena owners and league officials, every game aired was a step toward the NBA becoming a national brand. At the center of it all was George Mikan. By 1952, he was more than a basketball player. He was a sports icon, the face of an entire league. Children across the Midwest practiced hook shots in the driveway, hoping to mimic his trademark move. Opposing coaches devised entire defensive strategies just to slow him down. But at 28 years old, Mikan's body was beginning to betray him. Years of physical pounding had left him with chronically sore knees, and though he remained dominant, whispers circulated about how much longer he could hold up. Elsewhere, stars were blossoming. Dolph Schayes of the Syracuse Nationals continued to be a nightly double-double threat. Bob Cousy had transformed the Celtics from a middling team into one of the league's most entertaining squads, his flair challenging basketball's conservative traditions. And in New York, Harry Gallatin and Dick Maguire had given the Knicks an identity built on toughness and teamwork. Yet the Lakers, still anchored by Mikan, remained the team everyone measured themselves against. As the 1952-53 season tipped off, the central question lingered. Could anyone finally knock Minneapolis off the throne? The league once again featured 10 teams, split into the Eastern and Western divisions. Each played a 70-game schedule, still grueling in an era when train travel, smoke-filled arenas, and back-to-backs tested players' endurance. In the Western Division, the Minneapolis Lakers finished atop the standings yet again, posting a 48-22 record. Mikan averaged 20.6 points and 14.4 rebounds per game, still elite numbers despite his aching body. Vern Mickelson added muscle and scoring at forward, while Slater Martin's steady guard play balanced the attack. Though Mikan wasn't as invincible as in years past, the Lakers were still the league's measuring stick. Behind them, the Rochester Royals and Fort Wayne Pistons fought for position. Rochester, led by Arnie Risen and Bobby Wanzer, had been champions just 2 years earlier but were now more spoilers than favorites. Fort Wayne, with center Larry Faust, was physical and tough, but lacked the scoring punch to unseat Minneapolis. In the Eastern Division, the New York Knicks emerged as the top team, finishing 47-23. Gallatin, McGuire, and Karl Braun gave them a deep and balanced roster, capable of grinding out wins night after night. The Syracuse Nationals, powered by Schayes, finished second, while the Boston Celtics remained dangerous with dazzling fans and drawing growing media attention. By season's end, the storylines were clear. Mikan's Lakers were still the West's juggernaut, while the Knicks and Nationals were primed to battle for Eastern supremacy. The league's competitive balance had improved. No longer was it a one-man show, but Minneapolis remained the dynasty to beat. The playoffs of 1953 once again tested the limits of the players. The formats were shorter than today, best-of-3 and best-of-5 series, but the constant travel, quick turnarounds, and lack of modern medical care made them battles of endurance. In the East, the Knicks eliminated Baltimore in the division semifinals, then survived a brutal 5-game series against Syracuse in the division finals. Schayes was outstanding for the Nationals, but New York's balance carried the day. Harry Gallatin, nicknamed the Horse for his tireless rebounding, became the difference-maker, crashing the boards and giving New York second-chance opportunities that turned games. In the West, the Lakers beat Fort Wayne, then took down Rochester in a hard-fought series. Mikan, though hobbled at times, gutted through games with his usual dominance near the rim. His ability to score inside, draw fouls, and control rebounds remained unmatched. The stage was set for a finals rematch. The Minneapolis Lakers versus the New York Knicks, the same matchup that had gone 7 games the year before. The NBA could not have scripted it better. The finals of 1953 unfolded as another grueling battle between big-market New York and small-market Minneapolis. Madison Square Garden packed in crowds of 15,000 plus, while fans in Minnesota filled the Minneapolis Auditorium, desperate to see their dynasty continue. This time, the Lakers wouldn't let the series go 7. Mikan, playing through knee pain, delivered when it mattered most. He scored 30 points in Game 1, 21 in Game 3, and sealed the decisive Game 5 with 12 clutch points in the final quarter. Though visibly slowed, his size and presence dictated every possession. New York fought valiantly, Gallatin rebounding, McGuire orchestrating, Braun scoring, but they couldn't match Minneapolis inside power. The Lakers won the series 4-1, capturing their 4th championship in 5 years. It was a remarkable stretch of dominance unmatched in basketball history at the time. Yet beneath the celebration, a quiet truth lingered. Mikan was nearing the end. His knees were deteriorating, and even his enormous willpower couldn't hold back the toll of years of punishment. For the NBA, his decline posed a daunting question. What would the league look like without its first true superstar? The 1952-53 season reaffirmed the Minneapolis Lakers as basketball's first dynasty and cemented George Mikan's status as the face of the league. But it also signaled a transition. The Knicks had become perennial contenders, Schayes was steady as ever, and Bob Cousy was ushering in a new, flashier style. The NBA was no longer just about Mikan. It was preparing for the stars who would carry it into the next era. By 1953, the NBA had established itself as a legitimate, if still struggling, professional league. 8 years into existence, it had survived rivalries, mergers, and financial collapses that killed other sports experiments of the era. But while the league had stability, it also had a looming problem. The product on the court was becoming painfully slow. Teams had discovered that the easiest way to counter dominant centers like George Mikan was to stall. Without a shot clock, a team could simply pass the ball around, draining minutes at a time, and limit Mikan's opportunities to score. Some games turned into tedious marathons of keep away, with final scores dipping into the 40s or even 30s. Fans booed, attendance dipped, and sports writers openly wondered if professional basketball was entertaining enough to last. Despite this, the league still had star power. Mikan remained its most famous player, even as his knees betrayed him. Dolph Schayes of Syracuse was now recognized as the league's most complete forward. Bob Cousy had become a box office draw, dazzling crowds with behind-the-back passes and end-to-end speed. And in New York, Harry Gallatin and Karl Braun gave the Knicks grit and scoring in equal measure. For the 1953-54 season, the NBA featured 9 teams, after the Indianapolis Olympians folded due to gambling scandals involving former college stars. This contraction left the league tighter, with talent more concentrated across fewer rosters. Yet the real question of the season was not just who would win, but whether basketball itself needed fundamental change to remain. The Minneapolis Lakers entered the year knowing it might be George Mikan's final campaign. Though only 29, his body was battered beyond repair. He required cortisone shots to play. His mobility was compromised, and doctors quietly warned him of permanent damage if he continued. But Mikan was stubborn. He would play one more season, determined to go out a champion. The Lakers finished with a league-best 46-26 record, once again controlling the Western Division. Mikan averaged 18.1 points and 14.3 rebounds, still elite numbers, but his impact went beyond the stat sheet. Even diminished, his sheer size commanded double teams, freeing up Vern Mickelson and Slater Martin to contribute consistently. In the East, the Syracuse Nationals and New York Knicks battled for supremacy. Dolph Schayes put up 19.2 points and 13.9 rebounds a night, showing remarkable durability and skill. The Knicks, led by Gallatin's relentless rebounding and Braun's perimeter shooting, finished just behind them. Meanwhile, the Boston Celtics continued their rise under Red Auerbach, with Cousy's flair beginning to reshape how guards were viewed in professional basketball. The regular season confirmed the old truth. Minneapolis was still the team to beat. But beneath that dominance, fans grumbled about slow play. Teams without stars had learned to milk the clock, holding the ball for minutes at a time to keep games close. In one infamous contest, the Fort Wayne Pistons beat the Lakers 19-18, the lowest scoring game in league history. The debacle horrified fans and executives alike, a clear signal that something had to change. The 1954 playoffs followed the league's round-robin format, a quirky experiment designed to stretch out postseason revenue. Teams in each division played one another in miniseries, with the top 2 advancing to face off for the finals berth. In the East, Syracuse and New York fought to the wire. Schayes was brilliant, but the Nationals faltered against New York's depth and experience. The Knicks advanced to their 3rd consecutive finals, hoping this would finally be their year. In the West, the Lakers held off challenges from Rochester and Fort Wayne. Mikan, though limping and limited, dug deep when it mattered most. In a decisive game against Rochester, he scored 30 points despite playing with heavily taped knees, dragging Minneapolis back into the championship round. The 1954 finals were another clash between the Knicks and Lakers, the 3rd straight year the two powerhouses had met for the title. Unlike the year before, Minneapolis wasted no time. Mikan was not at his peak, but he had just enough left. He scored 20 points in Game 1, dominated the boards in Game 3, and hit clutch free throws in Game 6 to secure a 4-3 series win. The Minneapolis Lakers had won their 5th championship in 6 years, cementing themselves as the NBA's first true dynasty. For George Mikan, it was the perfect farewell. A few months later, he officially announced his retirement. Mikan's retirement in 1954 was seismic. He was the league's first household name, its first superstar, and its first dynasty builder. Without him, many feared the NBA would struggle to capture public interest. But in truth, Mikan's exit also created space for new stars, Cousy, Schayes, Neil Johnston, and the rising Boston Celtics, to shine without constantly being overshadowed. More importantly, the 1953-54 season forced the NBA to confront its entertainment problem. The 19-18 game became infamous, a black eye for a league desperate to sell itself as exciting. Behind the scenes, executives like Danny Biasone of the Syracuse Nationals began tinkering with solutions. Biasone suggested that each team be required to shoot within 24 seconds, a rule he believed would balance offense and defense while ensuring a steady flow of action. Though not yet implemented, the seeds of the shot clock revolution were planted. The legacy of 1953 to 54 is twofold. It marked the end of the Mikan era, closing the chapter on basketball's first great dynasty. And it marked the beginning of innovation, as the league realized it had to evolve or risk fading into obscurity. The 1953 to 54 season gave fans one last look at Mikan's dominance, culminating in a fifth Lakers championship. But it also revealed the NBA's growing pains, with stalling tactics threatening the sport's future. Out of that crisis would come the shot clock, and with it, the transformation of basketball into the fast-paced, high-scoring game we recognize today. The summer of 1954 was unlike any other in basketball history. Owners, coaches, and league executives finally admitted what fans already knew. The NBA had a problem. The game had become bogged down by stalling, most infamously in the 19-18 Fort Wayne Minneapolis game the previous season. Attendance dipped, newspapers ridiculed the league, and some feared the NBA might not survive the decade unless drastic changes were made. Enter Danny Biasone, owner of the Syracuse Nationals. Biasone loved basketball but hated teach. Exciting. His conclusion was simple. The best contests had about 60 shots per team. With a 48-minute game, that meant teams needed to shoot roughly every 24 seconds. Biasone presented his idea of a 24-second shot clock, and it was revolutionary. To enforce it, engineers created a visible timer placed above the backboard. Teams now had a strict limit on attempting a shot, or they would lose possession. The NBA adopted the rule for the 1954-55 season, ushering in a new era. The shot clock instantly changed the sport. Games sped up, scoring increased, and strategy evolved. Suddenly, holding the ball for minutes was impossible. Teams had to run plays quickly, transition offense became vital, and defensive pressure carried greater stakes. Writers hailed it as the salvation of basketball. The debut of the shot clock electrified fans. Scoring jumped by nearly 15 points per team on average, and the pace of play transformed the atmosphere in arenas. Instead of groans at stalling, crowds cheered the constant action. The NBA finally looked like the sport it aspired to be: fast, dramatic, and entertaining. On the court, new stars thrived under the rule change. Bob Cousy, already dazzling fans with flashy passing, became even more dangerous in Boston's up-tempo offense. Dolph Schayes of Syracuse saw more opportunities to score as teams could no longer slow him down with deliberate pace. Neil Johnston of the Philadelphia Warriors, the league's leading scorer, dominated with hook shots and inside play, benefiting from the increased possessions. For the first time, smaller markets like Syracuse and Fort Wayne could compete on equal footing. The Lakers, now without George Mikan after his retirement, stumbled to a pedestrian season, leaving the league wide open for a new champion. This parity, combined with the shot clock, gave fans a sense that anyone could win. The 1954-55 season also marked a cultural shift. The NBA was no longer viewed as a curiosity or a weak sibling of hockey and baseball. Sports pages began giving it more coverage, and younger fans embraced the nonstop action. Though still not America's top sport, basketball had carved out a foothold that felt sustainable. In the Eastern Division, the Syracuse Nationals and Boston Celtics went toe-to-toe. Schayes anchored Syracuse with his mix of rebounding, shooting, and leadership, while Cousy and Ed Macaulay pushed Boston's high-octane offense. Syracuse finished just ahead, earning the division crown. In the West, the Fort Wayne Pistons and Rochester Royals battled for supremacy. Fort Wayne, led by George Yardley and Larry Faust, adjusted quickly to the shot clock era. Their balanced attack and aggressive rebounding carried them to the top of the division. The Lakers, now adrift without Mikan, faded from contention, signaling the official end of the first dynasty. The playoffs showcased the league's new energy. In the East, Syracuse outlasted Boston in a physical, high-scoring series that highlighted the shot clock's impact. In the West, Fort Wayne edged Rochester in a tight battle that went the distance. The stage was set for a finals showdown: Syracuse Nationals versus Fort Wayne Pistons. The 1955 NBA Finals were the perfect showcase for the shot clock revolution. The pace was brisk, the scoring high, and the drama undeniable. The series went all the way to a decisive Game 7 in Syracuse. Dolph Schayes, battling through fatigue and double teams, delivered a heroic performance. He scored 20 points and grabbed key rebounds, while teammates Red Rocha and Paul Seymour provided steady support. Fort Wayne, led by Yardley, fought valiantly and even held a slim lead late in the fourth quarter. But in the closing minutes, Syracuse surged. Schayes hit clutch free throws, Seymour made a critical steal, and the Nationals held on for a 92-91 victory. Pandemonium erupted at Onondaga War Memorial Arena as Syracuse claimed its first and only NBA championship. The triumph validated Biasone's innovation. Not only had the shot clock saved the NBA, but it had delivered a thrilling finals that showcased everything the league wanted to be. The 1954-55 season is remembered as the birth of the modern NBA. The shot clock revolutionized the game, making it fast-paced and exciting, while opening the door for new champions. The Syracuse Nationals seized their moment in history, forever remembered as the team that won the first title of the shot clock era. The 1955-56 season opened with the NBA riding high on the success of the shot clock. The new pace had saved the league from stagnation, attendance was climbing, and fans finally had confidence in the sport's future. No longer were games slow affairs dominated by stalling. Instead, every contest promised scoring and excitement. For the league's executives, the challenge now was sustaining momentum. Would the novelty of the shot clock wear off? Or could new stars and dynasties emerge to keep fans engaged? The answer came quickly. A new scoring icon was ready to take center stage. Paul Arizin of the Philadelphia Warriors. Arizin, a Philadelphia native, had been one of the first players to popularize the modern jump shot, which made him nearly unstoppable in the new fast-paced game. His high-arching release was difficult to defend, and with the increased possessions of the shot clock era, he had more chances than ever to fill the box score. Meanwhile, the old guard was fading. George Mikan had retired for good, leaving Minneapolis without its towering force. The balance of power was shifting eastward, and Philadelphia, a city with deep basketball roots, was eager to reclaim its place as the center of the sport. The Philadelphia Warriors, coached by George Senesky, built their attack around Arizin and Neil Johnston, a left-handed center with a devastating hook shot. Johnston, who had already won multiple scoring titles earlier in the decade, remained a force inside, while Arizin's outside touch stretched defenses. Together, they formed a 1-2 punch perfectly suited for the new style of basketball. The Warriors also benefited from strong role players like Tom Gola, a versatile rookie out of La Salle University who could rebound, pass, and defend at a high level. Gola's arrival gave the Warriors balance, adding grit and hustle to complement Arizin's artistry and Johnston's post-dominance. Philadelphia stormed through the season, finishing with a league-best record. Their offense was fluid and modern, their defense rugged, and their home crowds passionate. For a league desperate for marketable stars and teams, the Warriors were a godsend. Arizin, in particular, became the face of the league's transformation, a skilled, stylish scorer who symbolized basketball's evolution. While Philadelphia surged, its rivals tried to keep pace. Boston Celtics, led by Bob Cousy and Bill Sharman, Boston continued to dazzle with fast breaks and backcourt brilliance. They were laying the foundation for what would soon become one of the greatest dynasties in sports, but in 1956 they were still a step away. Syracuse Nationals. Fresh off their 1955 championship, Syracuse leaned on Dolph Schayes' all-around excellence. Yet, the grind of defending a title wore on them, and they struggled to match their prior success. Fort Wayne Pistons. Consistent as ever, Fort Wayne used toughness and depth to remain competitive. George Yardley was developing into one of the league's premier forwards, setting the stage for his breakout in the years to come. In the West, without Mikan, the Lakers fell back into the pack. The Rochester Royals remained dangerous but lacked the superstar firepower to dominate. The balance of power clearly tilted eastward, with Philadelphia, Boston, and Syracuse emerging as the true heavyweights. The playoffs reinforced the sense of transition in the NBA. Syracuse's reign ended quickly, and Boston once again fell short of the finals. The path was clear for Philadelphia, which powered its way through behind Arison's scoring and Johnston's inside play. In the finals, the Warriors faced the Fort Wayne Pistons, who had clawed their way through the Western Division. Fort Wayne fought hard, but Philadelphia's star power was overwhelming. Arison averaged over 27 points per game in the series, dazzling with his jump shot and clutch scoring. Johnston dominated the paint, while Gola provided steady defense and rebounding. The Warriors captured the 1956 NBA championship, defeating Fort Wayne in 5 games. For Arison, it was the crowning moment of his career, proof that his style of play was not just effective but championship-worthy. For the league, it was symbolic. The NBA had found a new face for the post-Mikan era. The 1955-56 season cemented the NBA's future. The shot clock had saved the league, but it was stars like Paul Arison who gave it personality and style. The Philadelphia Warriors championship marked a new era, one where skill, speed, and innovation replaced brute dominance. It was the bridge from basketball's rough beginnings to the artistry the sport is now known for. The 1956-57 season stands as one of the most transformative years in NBA history. By now, the shot clock had fully reshaped the game, attendance was growing, and television was beginning to carry games into more American homes. But the real story of this season was the arrival of a rookie who would change the sport forever: Bill Russell. Russell had just led the University of San Francisco to back-to-back NCAA championships, bringing dominance through defense and rebounding in a way college basketball had never seen. His timing, shot blocking, and ability to control the game without scoring made him unique. When the Celtics acquired him in the 1956 NBA draft, via a trade with the St. Louis Hawks, it would prove to be one of the most important transactions in the history of sports. Boston already had stars like Bob Cousy, the magician of the fast break, and Bill Sharman, a deadly outside shooter. But what Red Auerbach's team lacked was an anchor, a defensive giant who could clean up mistakes, protect the rim, and fuel their up-tempo offense with rebounds. Russell was the missing piece. Russell didn't join the Celtics immediately. He was committed to playing in the 1956 Melbourne Olympics, where he helped lead Team USA to a gold medal. By the time he arrived mid-season, Boston was already a strong team, but Russell elevated them instantly. With Russell on the floor, the Celtics' defense was nearly impenetrable. Opponents who had previously thrived in the paint suddenly found themselves frustrated, their shots swatted away or altered. At the same time, Russell's outlet passes ignited Cousy-led fast breaks that became a Celtic trademark. Boston's style of play was exhilarating, run-and-gun offense paired with relentless defense. They played at a breakneck pace, wore teams down, and scored in transition. Crowds in Boston Garden roared with every blocked shot and every fast break layup. The Celtics finished with the best record in the league, firmly establishing themselves as the team to beat. The Celtics' rise didn't come without resistance. St. Louis Hawks, featuring Bob Pettit, one of the league's greatest scorers and rebounders, the Hawks were Boston's fiercest rivals. Pettit's inside scoring and toughness kept St. Louis in the hunt all season long. Philadelphia Warriors, the defending champions, led by Paul Arison and Neil Johnston, remained a force but struggled to match Boston's depth and athleticism. Syracuse Nationals. Dolph Schayes continued to shine, but Syracuse was beginning to show signs of decline against the league's faster, younger teams. The Western Division lacked the depth of the East, but the Hawks' emergence as a true power gave the NBA a perfect foil to the Celtics. The 1957 NBA Finals were one of the greatest series in basketball history. The Boston Celtics, powered by Russell's rebounding and defense, faced off against the St. Louis Hawks and their superstar Bob Pettit. The series was an instant classic. Games were physical, tense, and closely contested. Pettit battled Russell in the paint, while Cousy orchestrated Boston's offense against St. Louis's scrappy defense. The series stretched to 7 games, with the decisive contest played in Boston Garden. Game 7 became legendary. In a double overtime thriller, Russell pulled down an astounding 32 rebounds, while Pettit countered with relentless scoring. The Celtics ultimately prevailed, 125-123, capturing their first championship in franchise history. The 1956-57 season didn't just crown a champion, it launched a dynasty. The Celtics, with Bill Russell as their anchor, had found the formula for dominance. Defense, rebounding, teamwork, and pace. Their first championship signaled the dawn of one of the most extraordinary runs in sports history, while the Hawks' valiant effort gave the NBA a rivalry that would define the late 1950s. The 1957-58 season began with the Celtics riding high. Fresh off their thrilling Game 7 double overtime championship, Boston entered the new year with enormous expectations. They had Russell, Cousy, Sharman, and coach Red Auerbach leading a new era of fast-paced, defense-powered basketball. Many fans and sports writers predicted a repeat championship. Some even wondered if a new dynasty had already begun. But the NBA landscape was shifting. The St. Louis Hawks, stung by their narrow finals defeat, were hungrier than ever. Bob Pettit, their 6 feet 9 inches scoring and rebounding machine, was entering his prime. Alongside Cliff Hagan, Slater Martin, and Clyde Lavalette, the Hawks had depth, toughness, and motivation to dethrone the Celtics. Throughout the regular season, Boston largely lived up to the hype. Russell dominated the boards and continued revolutionizing defense, while Cousy dazzled with fast breaks. The Celtics finished 49-23, the best record in the league, cementing their role as favorites once again. But a pivotal moment would change the course of the season. In the finals against the Hawks, Bill Russell suffered a serious ankle injury in Game 3. Without their defensive anchor, the Hawks didn't waste their opportunity. Pettit played like a man possessed. In Game 6, with the championship on the line, he delivered one of the greatest single-game performances in NBA history. Pettit scored 50 points, including 19 of the Hawks' final 21 points, to carry St. Louis past Boston 110-109 and secure the first championship in franchise history. His performance remains legendary, not just because of the numbers, but because it symbolized the Hawks' determination to topple the mighty Celtics. The Hawks had found their moment, and for once, they were the kings of the NBA. The 1957-58 finals didn't just crown the Hawks as champions. It established a rivalry that would define the league for years. Boston's lesson. The Celtics realized how much they depended on Russell. His absence showed that even with Cousy's brilliance and Sharman's shooting, they couldn't impose their will without their defensive anchor. St. Louis's triumph. For Pettit and the Hawks, the victory validated years of frustration. They had gone toe-to-toe with the league's most hyped team and emerged on top, giving their franchise legitimacy in the growing NBA. This back-and-forth struggle between Boston and St. Louis would become the narrative centerpiece of the league's late 1950s. Fans knew they weren't just watching games. They were watching a heavyweight rivalry for the soul of pro basketball. The 1957-58 season ended with the Hawks on top, Pettit immortalized by his Game 6 masterpiece, and Boston humbled but not broken. For the NBA, it was proof that parity existed. Dynasties could stumble, rivals could rise, and drama would keep fans coming back. The Celtics entered the 1958-59 season with fire in their eyes. The memory of Bob Pettit's 50-point masterpiece that had denied them a repeat title lingered. For Bill Russell, the loss had been personal. He had been sidelined by injury, forced to watch as Pettit and the Hawks celebrated on Boston's home floor. Red Auerbach made it clear in training camp. This year, there would be no excuses, no slip-ups. The dynasty dream had to stay alive. Boston's core was as dangerous as ever. Bill Russell anchoring defense and rebounding. Bob Cousy still dazzling with his flashy ball handling and court vision. Bill Sharman delivering deadly perimeter shooting. Tom Heinsohn, Russell's partner in the frontcourt, providing muscle and scoring versatility. The Celtics didn't just bounce back. They dominated. Finishing with a 52-20 record, they overwhelmed opponents with their blend of defense and fast-break offense. Russell was nearly unstoppable. His rebounding totals defied belief, and he consistently outplayed the league's other big men. Cousy, though aging, still controlled the tempo, while Sharman and Heinsohn gave Boston scoring depth that opponents struggled to match. Meanwhile, the rest of the league struggled to find footing. The Hawks remained tough, but they weren't quite as sharp as the year before. The Lakers, still based in Minneapolis, were fading, even with young rookie Elgin Baylor showing signs of brilliance. The Minneapolis Lakers had been in decline since George Mikan's retirement, but the arrival of Elgin Baylor, a dynamic 6 feet 5 inches forward from Seattle University, injected new life into the franchise. Baylor had flair, athleticism, and scoring instincts unlike anything the league had seen before. He carried the Lakers to the NBA Finals almost single-handedly, averaging over 24 points and 15 rebounds in his rookie campaign. His arrival signaled a changing of the guard for the Lakers franchise. They had found a new superstar to build around. When the finals arrived, it was Boston versus Minneapolis. Russell's defensive juggernaut against Baylor's explosive scoring. But the Celtics were too deep, too experienced, and too disciplined. Boston swept the Lakers 4-0, sending a loud and clear message. The Celtics were here to dominate, and no upstart rookie, no matter how talented, was going to stop them. Russell's rebounding, Cousie's leadership, and Heinsohn's scoring were simply too much. The sweep marked Boston's second championship in 3 years, and its first step toward what would become the most legendary dynasty in NBA history. The 1958-59 season marked the true beginning of the Celtics' run of dominance. From here, Boston would go on to win 11 championships in 13 years, setting an almost unimaginable standard for greatness. For the Lakers, though humiliated in the sweep, the seeds were planted. Baylor was their future, and soon another young guard named Jerry West would join him. The stage was being set for the Celtics were back on top, reasserting their dominance with a championship sweep. The Lakers, though defeated, had found their new hero in Elgin Baylor. Together, these two franchises would shape the destiny of the NBA for decades to come. The 1959-60 season began with the league buzzing about one name, Wilt Chamberlain. At 7 feet 1 inch with unmatched size, speed, and athleticism, he was unlike anything professional basketball had ever seen. Chamberlain had been a high school sensation in Philadelphia, then dominated at Kansas, and even spent a year barnstorming with the Harlem Globetrotters before officially entering the NBA. Drafted by the Philadelphia Warriors, he was expected to be a star. But few realized just how immediately dominant he would be. From the moment he stepped on the floor, Wilt was a phenomenon. His sheer physical power and grace made defenders look helpless. He could score from anywhere near the rim. 7.6 points and 27 rebounds per game. Wilt not only led the league but shattered all existing records. Crowds flocked to see him play, and arenas filled just to witness the spectacle of his dominance. Wilt's presence lifted the Warriors back into contention, but it also created a new kind of tension in the league. How could anyone stop him? His scoring and rebounding were so overwhelming that coaches and players began rethinking strategies. Defenses collapsed on him, fouled him relentlessly, and still he couldn't be contained. For his efforts, Chamberlain won Rookie of the Year, Most Valuable Player, and the All-Star Game MVP. A clean sweep that no other player in history had accomplished. Yet, while Chamberlain towered over the league statistically, the path to championship still ran through Boston. The Celtics, fresh off their 1959 sweep, rolled through the season with Bill Russell anchoring their defense and a system built on teamwork, fast breaks, and Red Auerbach's coaching genius. Russell, Cousy, Sharman, and Heinsohn gave Boston balance, while Russell, in particular, became the only man capable of meeting Wilt head-on. Their battles were epic. Russell couldn't outscore Chamberlain, but he used positioning, intelligence, and stamina to slow him down, proving that championships weren't won by stats alone. This was the birth of one of the greatest rivalries in sports, Russell versus Chamberlain. When the postseason came, the Philadelphia Warriors and Wilt ran headlong into the Celtics' juggernaut. The games were brutal, Wilt dropping monstrous scoring lines, Russell countering with rebounding, shot blocking, and sheer will. In the Eastern Division Finals, Boston's depth and discipline prevailed. Russell wasn't about to let Wilt take his throne so soon. The Celtics defeated the Warriors and returned once again to the NBA Finals. There, they faced the St. Louis Hawks, led by Bob Pettit and Cliff Hagan. But Boston was too strong. The Celtics secured another championship, their third in 4 years, cementing their growing dynasty. The 1959-60 season didn't just crown another Celtics champion. It changed the entire landscape of the NBA. With Wilt Chamberlain's arrival, the league had its most marketable superstar yet, a scoring machine who drew national attention. At the same time, the Russell-Chamberlain rivalry was born, one that would define the NBA for the next decade and beyond. Meanwhile, the Lakers prepared to move from Minneapolis to Los Angeles, setting the stage for the NBA's westward expansion and the future Celtics-Lakers rivalry that would captivate generations. Wilt Chamberlain arrived and changed the game overnight, but Bill Russell and the Celtics still held the crown. The season planted the seeds for an era of legendary rivalries, growing star power, and the eventual transformation of the NBA into a national spectacle. The 1950s were the NBA's decade of survival, growth, and transformation. The league entered the decade still fragile, barely a decade removed from its founding, with small crowds, financial instability, and questions about whether pro basketball could truly capture America's attention. By 1960, though, the NBA had laid the foundation for the modern game. The early years of the decade were dominated by George Mikan and the Minneapolis Lakers, who turned professional basketball into a legitimate spectacle. His dominance forced the league to adapt, introducing rule changes like the goaltending rule and widening the lane to limit big men's advantages. His Lakers dynasty gave the league its first true champion and established the precedent for stardom driving fan interest. The mid-decade brought even greater change. The introduction of the 24-second shot clock in 1954 revolutionized basketball, transforming it from a slow, stalling game into a faster, more dynamic sport. The Syracuse Nationals and Rochester Royals gave fans competitive finals, while stars like Bob Cousy and Dolph Schayes showcased new styles of play. The Boston Celtics began building their dynasty under Red Auerbach, crafting a team-first philosophy that would change how franchises were built. Perhaps most importantly, the color barrier was broken in 1950. With Earl Lloyd, Nat Sweetwater Clifton, and Chuck Cooper entering the league, professional basketball began its long path toward diversity and representation. This integration brought new talent, new energy, and new cultural weight to the sport. By the late 1950s, the NBA had transformed into a league of stars and rivalries. The Celtics rose to dominance with Bill Russell's defense and leadership, redefining what it meant to win. Bob Pettit became the first MVP and carried the St. Louis Hawks to their only championship. The decade closed with the arrival of Wilt Chamberlain in 1959, a player so physically dominant that he made the sport feel entirely different overnight. At the same time, the Lakers prepared their move to Los Angeles, signaling the NBA's coming expansion into a truly national league. In just 10 years, the NBA had gone from a shaky experiment in post-war entertainment to a sport with superstars, dynasties, rule innovations, and cultural significance. The 1950s didn't just save professional basketball. They set the stage for the explosive growth of the 1960s, when Russell, Chamberlain, and the Celtics-Lakers rivalry would bring the game into the national spotlight. In the 1940s, the NBA was born. In the 1950s, it learned how to survive and evolve. By 1960, it was ready to thrive.